So today we are introducing the concept of entity relationship diagram. So this part is after analysis. We will go to this part. This is known as designing phase. We are in the designing phase. So entity relationship diagram, in short, it is known as ERD. Okay. So ERD is important because we want to understand the data structure. So data structure or the characteristics of the data is represented by ER diagram of the system. Now, how to draw the ER diagram? As we have mentioned, ER diagram consists of two things. One is entity, another is relationship. So what is entity? Entity is something for whom we want to store the data for. Entity is something for which we want to store the data for. So if we want to store some data regarding something, that might be our entity. So entity could be here, as you can see, a business area using entities for categorizing the data, and the relationship is basically association in between the entities. So entity is nothing but something belong to the business area and which has, for which we are storing the information, and relationship is the association between the entities. Now let me mention about one business case where I am saying students are registering for courses. One student can take many courses. In a single course we can have many students. So what we can say about entity and relationship, we can see, if you want to have a system to store this information, definitely you need to store information of the courses. Yes or no? Yes, right. At the same time, you need to store information of the students. Very good. So student and courses would be my relation, right?
Yes, sir.
Honey. Student and courses would be my
Entity.
very good, would be your entity. Student and course should be your relation, should be your entity. And what would be the relationship? Is there a relationship between student and course?
Number of students enrolled in a course.
Registration.
No, the relationship is how these two are related. How can you relate these two?
So the number of students enrolled in a course?
That means you are saying enrollment.
Yes, sir.
Or registration, or student taking course, takes. So these are all relationship. That means any verb that can associate two entities should be known as relationship. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
So this is an example. Here I can see we have supplier, we have shipment, we have item, we have customer, we have order, and we have product. We can see supplier can supply items, items can be shipped through shipment, supplier can send by shipment. Okay, here we can see customer submits order, order has or contain products, products are used in item. Is it okay? So the rectangle boxes are my, what are the rectangle boxes?
Entities.
Entity type. So here you can see the rectangle box is your entity type, and this line between the entities are my relationship. Make sense?
Yes.
So this is all you need to understand for ER diagram. You need to find the entity and you need to find the relationship. So going in detail of entity, entity could be a person, a place, object, or event, or even a concept in the user environment for which the organization wish to maintain the data for. So for which I need to maintain data would be known as my entity. Okay. So entity could be of two types. One is strong entity, another is weak entity. Strong entity, that means that can represent itself independently without any help. And weak entity is it needs someone help to identify itself. So these are definitions. I am not going in detail of the entity examples. So this is how we denote entity. Strong entity is represented by rectangle box. Double line rectangle box represent weak entity, and rounded rectangle is for associative entity. So these are three types of entities that we can see here. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So what would be an entity and what should not be an entity? First of all, any object for which we may have some instance in the database. Now, what is an object? What is an instance? So let me go back to your object-oriented programming class. Do you know what is class and what is object of a class? Can we explain what is a class and what is object of a class?
Sir, class হচ্ছে যে কোনো কিছু হতে পারে। সাপোজ হিউম্যান একটা ক্লাস হয়, তাহলে প্রত্যেকটা পিপল হবে তার অবজেক্ট।
Very good, very good. ওই প্রত্যেকটা মানে each and every person of that human class would be known as an object of human class, right?
Yes,
Similarly, entity is my class. Entity is my class and instance are my objects. Make sense? So let's say I have a class called student. I have a class called student. Then what will be my instance?
Sir, student ID, student name.
No. Nope. Student ID and student name is not instance.
Say student একটা instance.
Student একটা class. I mentioned student is a class. Student class contain lots of attribute, right? A class contain lots of variable like student ID, student name, student age. These are there in the class. Now, if I want to create an object, how can I create an object and what should be the example of an object?
Sir, are you talking about physical attributes or what?
I'm talking about object-oriented programming where you have learned what is a class and what is an object. I'm mentioning, let's say a class is a student is a class. Student class has lots of properties, lots of attributes. These attributes are the class element, member of the class. Maybe they are private elements, private variables are there. So let's say student ID, student name, these are some private variables, okay?
Yes, sir. So if
now if I define an object, what would be an object? Can you give me an example of an object for
Sir,
class?
A particular student.
Sorry,
Yeah.
suppose
Sir, একটা particular student, sir. যেমন, sir.
like you.
Yes, sir. Like me.
say
Like
student
you.
name. Say student
Exactly.
can
Sorry?
be, say student, if student is a class, then student name is the instance.
No. Like human is a class, right?
Yes, sir.
Inside the human class, what are the attributes could be there? Can you name some attribute?
No.
You can't name any attribute. Inside one human class, what could be there?
Name, height, weight.
Very good. Can I mention name is an instance or name is an object of human? Can I say that?
Yes, sir, we can say that.
Can we?
No.
We never can say that. We never can say that. So that is an attribute of the human. So if I need to have a human, as Asiya was mentioning, individual person would be an example of human. Like you are a human. So how can you be a human? Because you have to have all the attributes that is there in the class.
Yes, sir.
That doesn't mean that a particular attribute is an instance. Can an attribute be an instance?
No, sir.
So this is the difference between, this is the same thing in class. Here in database, class is a entity and object is a instance. Now, as I was asking, if student is a class, what is the, if student is an entity, what would be the instance? You have mentioned you, individual student. A particular student is an instance. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
If course is an entity, what should be an instance?
Specific course.
Like CSE 303,
Yes,
database
sir.
management system, 3 credit course or 4 credit
Yes.
course. This is an instance of
Course.
course
Class.
class. Here we will say this is an entity, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that means whenever we are having an entity, entity should have multiple instances. It should have many instances. At the same time, it should have multiple attributes. Like for example, human has its name, height, weight. These are the attribute of human. Course has ID, course name, credit. These are some attribute of course. So if I found something, then and found there is no instance, will that be considered as an entity? If an object is found and that object has no instance, can that be considered as an entity?
No, sir.
No, sir. If I found an object which has no attribute, can that be considered as an entity?
No, sir.
I think no, right? Very good. And at the same time, a user of the database for whom you are designing the system will never be an entity. Output report, input form, these won't be considered as an entity. So here as this is the last slide that we will discuss. We have a model. Here we can see treasurer is there who is receiving expense report, and expense report is basically summarizing the expenses. Expenses are charged from different accounts, and accounts is managed by the treasurer. Now think very carefully. Who is a treasurer? Treasurer is a one person or multiple person?
So one person.
One person. That means, is there any multiple instances?
No, sir.
No. Then can treasurer be an entity?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No. Treasurer is also a user, system user, right? They are using the system.
Yes, sir.
So we have found here, this is saying a user of the database system can never be an entity. So we found treasurer will not be an entity. Similarly, expense report, this is a report. As it mentioned previously, any output, input, database of the database, that means report, cannot be considered as an entity. Therefore, expense report, can it be considered as an entity?
No.
Answer is no. Therefore, we come up with a ER diagram that shows as below. Account in charged expenses. Account is charged with expenses. The others are not relevant in the system. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so from here, in the next class, we will demonstrate, we will complete this lecture, and we will give you some examples, and I hope we will have some exercise for you as well. So next class, that means on Sunday, we will go through the ER diagram, and I hope we will be able to complete ER diagram on the next class. So if you have any question, then basically we can take the